Hey guys, welcome to 6 Minutes for Tuesday, July 5th. I'm Jason Fulmore, SC Russell, and today we are talking Fargo, Team Florida. And Team Florida is the second one that we've done. Yesterday we released Team Alabama. Today it's up to Team Florida, and we're going to get into all that and cover it and look at what looks like how Team Florida shapes up heading to Fargo. But before we get to that, and I'm going to do this at the beginning of every single one of these. So if you've already heard this, skip ahead a little bit. You don't have to hear the whole context as it relates to Fargo, the schedule, all those sorts of things again. But I think most people probably tune in for their state, focused on their, what they're interested in. So it's important to do this time and again. So first and foremost, this is the schedule for release of the previews and the weight class previews, or the division previews, I should say. So as you can see, we did Alabama yesterday, Florida today, rest of the states the rest of this week. But then on Monday, July 11th, we kick off talking about specific divisions. 16U women are the first ones up on our schedule. We'll break that down, talk about who returns, who are the All-Americans in each of the weight classes based upon what we know. Maybe, weights change all the time. And just because someone is listed at X weight doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be there. So this is going to be our best guess of who we might see match up and who might be the favorites, quote unquote, heading into Fargo. Then we'll do 16 men all the way down. And then on Friday, July 15th, I've got it scheduled to talk to a bunch of different people from each of the states. It's coaches from each of the different states. And look for that on Friday afternoon/evening before we kick things off on Saturday morning. Speaking of Saturday morning, here's the schedule for the week. In case you don't know, this is pretty much nonstop action from Saturday, July 16th to Friday, July 22nd. And the way it basically works is that you begin one tournament, and then the next day you finish that tournament as you begin another tournament, so on and so forth. So, for example, on the morning of Saturday, July 16th, we begin with the 16U women. They kick things off. Afternoon, 16U freestyle for men. And because the men have a larger number in their bracket, typically, they won't actually finish until Monday, but they will wrestle on Sunday as well. So Sunday, July 17th, the junior freestyle men will kick off, and then we get, and this will be a consistent pattern of behavior or pattern over the course of the week. About 1:30, 2 o'clock on each day, starting Sunday, July 17th, we will get the finals for one of the tournaments. And the first one up is the 16U women medal matches. They're All-Americans will be crowned that day. And then in the evening, we'll go back to the 16U freestyle men to finish up some of their quarters and consies. The junior freestyle men will continue their rounds, and we'll talk about why we have so many rounds for some of these divisions. And then so on and so forth. We go to Monday, the 16U men's freestyle begins or finishes up their medal matches, and so on and so forth. But before we get to that, let's jump to why Fargo. So Fargo is it's a big deal. It's a big deal for probably the biggest deal because it is our Olympic styles where we wrestle freestyle and Greco. Many of the future Olympians and so on and so forth, they competed in Fargo and things like that. But if you're interested in wrestling in college, particularly a Division I level, the numbers kind of speak for themselves. And you can see right here, 79% of NCAA Division I place winners since 2006 competed in Fargo sometime during their time. They might have competed as cadets or 16Us. They might have competed as juniors. They might have competed as both. But at some point in time, if you made the podium in NCAA's Division I, 79% of them were in Fargo at one point in time during their high school careers, during their high school aged times. 78.2% of champions placed at 16Us or junior nationals since 1994. And the same is true for the women. As you can see, 85% of NCAA women's champions from 2020-22 placed in Fargo, and so on and so forth. Now, how do we know this? Well, because Jason Bryant is the man, and Jason has done a fantastic job of pulling together a huge almanac of information, and it is the FargoAlmanac.com. If you're interested, it is a ton of information. So interesting to look back on who has placed previously, how many champions they've had, all the different things that we talk about as it relates to junior nationals, cadet nationals, 16Us now. He's got everything in this Fargo Almanac. So if you're interested, I would totally endorse it. That's where we get much of this information from. Not all of it, but much of this information from. And it helps provide context for what we see and what our expectations should be heading into Fargo. And the reason I bring up the word expectations is because this next slide absolutely, I think, captures why this is so important. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with Fargo or junior nationals, you're used to, I don't know, lots of the different other things that are going on in the wrestling world, whether it's Disney Duels or Spartan Nationals or NHSCAs or this or that, okay, state championships. This gives you some context about why being on the podium in Fargo is at such a high level. So as we look at these numbers in Greco, 16U, and juniors, from 2018, which is on the left, 2019, 2020, you can see that the numbers have risen, 915, 967, 943. And this is the number of entries for Greco, for freestyle, and for the women. And the reason I bring that up is because this is your average number in each bracket. So just take a look at junior freestyle. Junior freestyle, we had almost 1,600 wrestlers compete. That means that on average, 106 were in each bracket. Now, it doesn't quite work out that way. I mean, it's an average, but so if you were a 100-pound junior or a 285-pound junior, your bracket was probably below 106, a little bit below 106. But boy, I'll tell you what, if you were at 132, 138, 145, 152, anywhere in those middle weights, your brackets were huge. You're going to go to Flow Arena, look it up come a couple weeks from now, and you're going to see that it goes out to a bracket of 256. Now, there aren't 256 in the bracket. There are about 150, 160 or so in the bracket in those weight classes. But that means that you have to fight through and win 8, 9, whatever matches to get yourself into a position to be on that podium. So it just gives you a really good idea of how far you have, how hard you have to work in this tournament to make the podium. And that's just the numbers. That's not the quality, which is what we will see next week when we start breaking this down into each of the weight classes. Many of the top juniors, sophomores, freshmen from across the country are all over this, and it'll be we'll talk a little bit about kind of how they break it down and that sort of thing. But that's the basic numbers. That's why Fargo is important. Let's jump to Team Florida and see what they have to say. All right, so Team Florida, 16U women, and the reason we start with the 16U women is because they are the first ones up on Saturday morning. As you can see, there have been 11 All-Americans for Team Florida for 16U women. They rank 22nd overall, but they're just a handful away from breaking into the top 15. In fact, Florida had a really, really good run in 2021. Valerie Solorio became the second, I believe it was the second, champion for Team Florida for 16U women after she won it at 94 pounds. And yeah, I mean, Florida has made a lot of strides, and it will be really interesting to see in the 16U women Saturday morning which of these, and this is the roster, and I've got a list of the weights there next to each of the names, but I want you to know that those are completely tentative, right? I mean, there might be somebody who's cutting weight, decides they're not going to do it anymore. Or there might be somebody who said, you know what, I wasn't going to go to a lower weight class, but after working out and being in camp and everything else, I'm already down to that other weight class. So none of this is set in stone until they weigh in for each of the different tournaments. But this gives you a pretty good idea. I don't believe that the 16U women's roster this year is as strong as it was last year, but there are certainly several names on this list, headlined by Mary Manus at 100 pounds for Lake Highland Prep, who are going to be in the hunt. They're definitely going to be in the hunt for a spot on the podium. And I'm going to throw out a couple other names, Kyalani Barrientos, based upon her wrestling at, I think it was Junior Duels. You see names, Cheyenne Cruz down at the bottom, who I believe is ranked by USA Wrestling. These are some other names that you're going to want to pay attention to. And we'll get into really a lot better detail next week when we start talking about the actual weights and who we could see. Because, what's funny is that there are weight classes that are just super stacked. And then there are weight classes, well, it's not quite as stacked. It's not nearly as difficult as, say, another weight class. And that makes a world of difference, to be honest with you. All right, so let's jump over to the 16U men. And 16U men have had a lot of success during the history in Florida. There are 80 freestyle All-Americans. The most medals that they've ever had in one tournament was back in 1990. Man, a long time ago, with 6. They've had 12 champions, 16U freestyle champions, but the last one wasn't that recent. Well, I mean, Nick Bazakis back in 2019 isn't too far away, but they've certainly had their opportunities since then. None of it kind of pushed through. It'll be really interesting because I think that there are several names in this year's 16U Team Florida that have a real shot at breaking that and climbing to the top of the podium. They had a lot on the podium last year, 2021. They had 5 All-Americans: Rivera, Mohena, Garcia, Barreja, and Sawyer Bartlett. Boy, I messed that up. Sorry, Sawyer. There should be a T in there. Anyway, and jumping down to Greco, Florida has actually been super talented in Greco as well. 122 16U Greco All-Americans. They had 9 in 2010. They've had 20 champions. Sawyer just won one last year in 2021. And they had 4 All-Americans as well in 2021. So the 16U men, boy, a year ago and historically, they've been super tough. How do they look coming into this year? This is a list of the roster. And based upon their performance at cadet duels, they have to feel really confident that they have several individuals within this group that can make a run, not only for a spot on the podium, but can make a run for a spot at the top of the podium. Lincoln Sledzinowski is got to be one of the best at 100 pounds. You got Fretwell and De Janeiro at 113. Anderson Heap had a really good tournament at cadet duels at 132. Elvis Solis wrestled fantastic at 138 at cadet duels. We haven't seen Johnny Maldonado at one of the duels, and he's a cadet, and he's super tough. So it'll be really interesting. And I could go on. And Claudio Torres, Michael Mako. I mean, again, I can't name everybody's name, but there are a number of individuals within the 16U roster that should be hunting for a spot on the podium and for a date in the finals on Monday. I believe it's Monday when 16U freestyle kicks off for their finals. All right, so let's jump to the junior women. Junior women in Florida, 4 champs, 51 All-Americans. That is fantastic. They currently rank 10th. And again, these numbers go back to Jason Bryant and Fargo Almanac. And you can get a list of all 51 All-Americans. But just like the 16U men, the junior women haven't had a champ in several years. So the question is will there be one in this next group that breaks through and breaks that streak? And I think the chances are really, really pretty good. Although I will say the junior women brackets should be extremely tough. They had 6 All-Americans in 2021. Keilani Vega, Claire Bowie, Hannah Hall. Again, I don't want to list everybody, but out of those 6, 4 of them are on the roster this year. So they've been here, they've done it. The junior women had a really good tournament a year ago. Fully expect that they're going to have a really good tournament this year. The competition's super tough, but Team Florida junior women should be right in the hunt. They have had 7 top 10 finishes in their history, but they have yet to crack the top 5. I don't know if this is the year, but they have the group that can do it. And here's to take a look. This is their junior women roster. At 100 pounds, they have a returning All-American in Keilani Vega and a returning 16U national champ in Valerie Solorio. They have an All-American at Claire Bowie at 106. Juliana Diaz at 117. You look down, Alyssa Favara. I believe Henley Haynes was an All-American, although you can check me on that. Andrea Smith. Actually, Haynes wasn't, I don't believe. I'll have to go back and check on that. But if you look through this roster, and that's not even mentioning, Kaylee Reese, who is ranked in the top 10 in the country at her weight class. Cameron Galvin. So Team Florida women juniors are going to be tough. Now, the competition's super tough, and it will be interesting to see how they respond, especially those 16Us. The thing that I'm really interested in looking at is the 16Us moving up to the junior level, how they deal with competing at the junior level. Usually older, stronger, that sort of thing, and whether they're able to kind of push through and make the podium again is always something really interesting to look at. But watch out for Team Florida women. Those juniors are. I wouldn't be surprised if they had more than 6 All-Americans this year. All right, let's jump to our final group, and that is the junior men. And the junior men, as you can see here, they have 75 freestyle All-Americans, 9 freestyle titles. In fact, I think, and I'm not sure if this was 16Us or if this was the juniors, but way back when, their first All-Americans, either at 16U or in juniors in freestyle, Dana Wilkes and Ricky Gullett not only made the podium, but won it. So that was either at juniors or 16U. I think it was 16U, based upon what I know of their ages. That would probably be 16U. But still, fantastic. That's a really interesting accomplishment. They had 5 in 2011. They had 4 last year. Braden Bazil, Ethan Vergara, Danny Nini, Sebastian Malguzio. Vergara is back. Had a wonderful junior duels. Only had 1 loss. Totally expect him to be back in the hunt, looking for a title in Fargo this year. The last champ, again, for all the success that Team Florida has had in terms of putting people on the podium, they have not had champs except for Sawyer. They haven't had many champs in the last few years. And Sawyer was back at the 16Us in Greco. So the last one for freestyle was Anthony Artelona in 2017. They have 6 top 10 finishes, but have not broken into the top 5. It is a tough nut to crack. They've got a solid squad, and we're going to get to that in just a second. Let's talk really quick about 147 Greco All-Americans. That's number 11 in the country. 24 Greco titles. They had 10 make the podium in both 2009 and 2011. They had 3 a year ago, Tyler Washburn being one of them, and Tyler Washburn is back. So certainly expect him to make a run. And again, their last champ wasn't that recent. Dante Giovanetta, Big Papi he won it back in 2015. So it's been a minute for Team Florida on top of that podium, all over the podium elsewhere, but on top of that podium. So who in the juniors really stands out? And again, we've got two different rosters here. So I'm going to go ahead, because there were so many names on the list. Let's break it down to the bottom half, the 106 to the 145s. You see Tyler Washburn there, who certainly is one to watch, returning Greco All-American. Cooper Haas had one loss at junior duels. Brandon Van Hoke had one loss at 145. It'll be interesting to see if he's at 138 in Fargo. So the bottom half, all of them have an opportunity to go out and to make some noise and to make an impact. But juniors are so deep. It is such a deep and competitive division, junior freestyle and junior Greco, it'll be interesting to see how they battle and how they break through. The second part of the roster, the 152 to 285, besides Vergara, who we've already mentioned, and Sawyer Bartelt at 195, the other names that kind of stand out, Roman Garcia is a returning double All-American at 16U at 170. He struggled a little bit at junior duels. Be interesting to see how he comes out and competes. Fargo, he seems to always step up and really shine out, and don't be surprised to see Roman back on the podium again. 160, Cordell White, Tito, Solorzano are there. But the one person that I think that has it continues to get better and better and better and better is Brendan Abden. Brendan is a graduated senior, headed to Little Rock in the fall. Just looked superb at junior duels if you watched him compete, both in Greco and in freestyle. Totally expect him to be in the hunt for a spot on the podium and maybe a spot on top of that podium when all is said and done. Anyway, that is our Florida preview. We're going to get into a lot more detail. Check it out next week where we break down some of the weights, and you can see, which weights are going to be some super tough and super competitive in all of these divisions. And the truth is, Fargo's it is a thing because of the level of competition. So I didn't list everybody's name. There are some superb wrestlers on this list. Can't wait for one of them that maybe we weren't paying as close attention to pop off and make that podium. And we'd all be surprised. Yeah, maybe. But totally expect some of these names that I haven't mentioned yet to have really good tournaments up in Fargo. Anyway, hope you guys have a great trip. Best of luck to Team Florida as they head to Fargo. I'll be watching you guys. Be cheering you from the side.